Hey, everybody, Off the Mic Sports Network here. Another edition of Off the Top Rope. So, as I talked about, AEW Fyter Fest was kind of a fucking disaster. Um, Not from an in ring wise, like I said, the work was fine, but like none of it meant anything. None of it meant anything. So, like, I don't really know what AEW is setting out to accomplish, but I wanted to point something out here. And I said this in my big picture review of the show. And you could go watch that here on the channel. The women's division in AEW, you could not have a bigger indication of how AEW feels about their women's division than how this 4 hours was structured. Because basically, you had two matches, one that went really quick, and they did a pretty good job with Tekla after that debacle of a debut squash match, which was fine. And she sets up another match with another woman who just keeps losing, who's great and is misutilized in Queen Aminata. And then you had a meaningless tag match with Toni Storm and, Mina Shirakawa taking on Julia Hart and Sky Blue with Mercedes Moné. They said was going to be on commentary, but basically she was just eating a steak and, drinking wine at ringside, even though the steak looked like a prop and it looked like it was cooked to fuck. And then after the match, like there was no real build towards All In. It was just Mercedes runs away and Toni Storm proceeds to just eat the steak like with her hand and trying to chew it, even though it was, like I said, cooked to fuck. And that's all the build you got for the biggest women's match of all time. That's what you get 5-6 weeks out from your biggest show of the year. Great job. Then the other segment is Megan Bane and Penelope Ford trying to beat up Anna Jay. Anna Jay's old tag team partner, Ty Mello, makes her return, which admittedly was a very cool, moment for this show. But man, 4 hours of television, 4 hours of TV time, over 4 hours, by the way. They went past the top of the hour. 2 matches, 3 segments. That's it. And then you had the follow-up of the Tekla match with Queen Aminata, which was like a quick 30-second to a minute promo to set up their match next week at Summer Blockbuster. Guys, I don't know what else to tell you, man. Like, this women's division stinks. In AEW stinks. And if you could criticize a lot of, and so people will say I get way too defensive about WWE. You can be critical of a lot of things about WWE, specifically, what TKO has kind of done with their mindset, pricing fans out of things. You can get in TKO's face about a lot of different storylines that have been going on, how they booked the tag team division on Raw with the New Day and the New Day's heel turn. Like, I can list a bunch of bad things that I could get pissed off about. The one thing that you cannot definitively criticize is the WWE women's division. It's so freaking stacked that they moved 4 of their cornerstone. They've moved 4 of their cornerstone, or presumably are going to move 4. They've moved 3 of them. Jordan Grace is probably not going to be far behind, but you move Stephanie Vicaire, Roxanne Perez, and Julia all up to the main roster in the last, 2 to 3 months. You've done that. And now immediately you have supplemented the NXT women's division that has a lot of young and hot rising stars in there. And you bring in Mariah May, a former world champion in the AEW promotion, and you're still freaking loaded. Meanwhile, there is a loaded and talented women's division in AEW. Where the fuck's Willow Nightingale? Where the fuck's Chris Statlander? Where the fuck is Thunder Rosa? Britt Baker, who has not been seen or heard from in almost a year because she's probably sick and tired of this shit. And I know a lot of people have their reservations about Britt Baker. But you mean to tell me 3 to 4 segments on this entire 4-hour broadcast for the women? All you women's wrestling truthers and all you people advocating for women's wrestling need to really sit down and evaluate, does Tony Khan really give a shit about women's wrestling? This is why I said Mercedes Moné and Toni Storm, admittedly going to be one of the great women's matches of all time. They weren't even trying to build it. And this is why I said that this is a detriment to the women's division as a whole. And Mercedes Moné, everything that she said is not coming true. This women's division is in the worst state that it has ever been in all my years of watching AEW. They at least gave a shit about women's wrestling when Britt Baker was around. Where the fuck's Hikaru Shida? Nyla Rose? Like, when where the heck are these people? It's because every single one of them has been cast aside. Athena is barely making a return to Ring of Honor, tossed aside because Mercedes needed to get into that main event at All In, or not. It's not going to be the main event, or going to be one of the top matches. Listen, if one of you idiots in the comments is going to try and advocate to me, yeah, Toni Storm and Mercedes Nation main event All In, guys, they didn't do anything tonight. Mercedes was eating a fucking steak and drinking wine at ringside while Toni was wrestling. They're literally going to do the same thing next week. That's not building to what was the biggest women's match. If you're going to make it feel big, make it feel big. They're relying strictly on name, brand, and aura. And there's no women in this division that are even going to be worth the drop of a hat because all of them have been beaten. You're putting Julia Hart in a match with Toni Storm for what? For what? Have these women go at it in different matches and then have Toni Storm and Mercedes Mone build to their match rather than having one of these women go into the match and take a pinfall. Megan Bane is basically challenged for the world championship. She's basically playing tag team bodyguard basically and just trying to just be like a gatekeeper for people returning or trying to, help them mold in like a women's tag division, which is not really well thought out at this point. Like what? Like, it's so frustrating to me that everybody has been advocating so much for women's wrestling and they're just letting a lot of this go in the name of, oh yeah, we're getting Toni Storm and Mercedes Moné, maybe two of the great women's wrestlers working today and maybe two of the greats of all time. And I'm not dismissing that. These two women are incredible. They're going to put on an incredible match, but at least give us a reason to care. And they didn't do that tonight. They didn't do that at Fyter Fest. And then on top of it, the rest of this show, when it came to the women, was a fucking joke. It was a fucking joke. You have your new hot commodity, Tekla, come in for a little short squash match, and then they don't even follow up on the whole thing with Jamie Hayter. They don't follow up on that at all. And we're getting Queen Aminata, who's going to get tossed aside for the new toy for Tony Khan. And then, Ty Mello, that was really cool because she hasn't been seen on television. Like, I think it's been at least a year, maybe even closer to 2, because she was pregnant. She had a kid. So it was really cool to see her back with Saving Anna Jay, who she's got a ton of history with. But, man, it's just like none of this show meant anything. And then on top of it, the women just, there was nothing going on. And you got one women's match on the bill. One. That's all you got. Like holy shit, man. What did AEW really seek out to accomplish tonight? That's my question. Is like, if you were trying to build to a pay-per-view, you didn't accomplish that. If you're trying to get us to feel excited about some of your matches at the pay-per-view, you didn't do that. And then on top of it, when you have a really good women's division, you just re-signed Willow Nightingale. She wasn't on this show. Chris Statlander's fucking great. She's not on this show. Athena was featured prominently in the promotion of All In. She's been nowhere to be found since she lost to Mercedes. We get Mercedes Moné eating a steak at ringside. That's what we get. That's what they think of the women's division. Say what you want, man. Like, you got all you people advocating for Mercedes she killed this division, man. She killed this division. And to some degree, unfortunately, Toni Storm did too. Like, Deonna Purrazzo's another example. Who the fuck is she? This is insanity that you had 4 hours of television and that's the best you could do for your women's division. But hey, WWE, woo, man, they do so many things wrong. Zelina Vega being the champion, she broke Chelsea Green's nose. At least Zelina Vega's on television every single week. SmackDown's not very good. It's a 3-hour show. At least they feature their women at least somewhat. I mean, come on. What are we doing, man? What are we doing? Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.